The wind blew across the barren surface of Tyrian 6, carrying fine red dust that swirled around the jagged rocks like tiny dancers in a storm. Lyra pressed her small frame against a crumbling wall, her bright eyes scanning the horizon. She had learned early to be cautious. Orphans, even in the most communal societies, were often overlooked. She had no parents, no siblings, and only a handful of older children who tolerated her presence. Most of the adults ignored her entirely. The colony was quiet at this hour, the usual bustle of trade and conversation stilled by the harsh afternoon heat. Lyra loved these moments of silence. They gave her time to think, to explore, to dream. Today, she had ventured farther than usual, beyond the edges of the abandoned settlement where old human relics lay half-buried in the red sands. The humans had come years before, long before she was born, leaving behind strange technology and scattered warnings. Most of it was ignored by her people, considered dangerous or useless, but Lyra was curious. Curiosity was her only companion in the emptiness that surrounded her life. As she picked her way between broken machinery and rusted panels, she noticed a small device half buried in sand. Its edges were scratched, and a faint glow flickered from one corner. Lyra knelt and brushed the dust away. The device hummed softly. She had seen similar devices in old human stories, communication tools, they called them. She pressed a small button and a faint blue light flared. "Hello," she whispered, unsure if anyone could hear her. There was no reply, only the steady hum of the device. Encouraged, she pressed another button and then another. And finally, in a voice that was distant and electronic, a question came back. "What kind of help?" Far beyond the colony, aboard a human exploration vessel, Captain Elias Kane sat in the command chair, listening to reports from sensors and monitors. His ship was one of the few human outposts on the outer rim of the galaxy, a place humans visited to observe and assist, not to conquer or exploit. He had spent years navigating alien worlds, negotiating with species that were often wary of humans. And yet in all his travels, nothing had prepared him for this, a voice, soft and trembling, speaking words that reached through the void and into his heart. "Did you hear that?" he asked his communications officer. "Captain, it's just a signal. Could be interference from the planet," the officer said. Elias shook his head. "No. Listen again." He had known loss, he had lost people he loved, had witnessed hardship and cruelty in the universe, but this was different. This was innocence calling for care, for guidance, for love. "I'm going there," he said quietly. His officer raised an eyebrow. "To the colony." "I'm going myself." The journey to the colony was not easy. Elia's ship descended through the planet's thin, dusty atmosphere, buffeted by sudden gusts of wind. He watched the settlement below, a patchwork of metal structures and rock shelters, barely clinging to life amidst the harsh environment. Landing safely required precision, skill, and patience. Elias handled each maneuver with care, knowing that the safety of the inhabitants, especially the child who had spoken, depended on him. When he stepped out of the ship, the red dust clung to his boots and clothing. The wind carried a scent of iron and stone, sharp and alive. Lyra watched from a distance, hidden behind a rock, her heart pounding. She had never seen a human this close. They were stories, images in old books, but this was real. Tall, strong, and calm, Elias moved with a confidence that both frightened and fascinated her. At first, she stayed hidden, observing as he approached the settlement. The humans and aliens exchanged cautious gestures. The colony elders regarded him with suspicion, questioning his purpose. But Elias did not demand attention or respect. He offered help where he could, repairing broken water systems, adjusting energy fields that had gone offline, assisting with minor disputes. Slowly, the elders began to see that his intentions were genuine. Lyra crept closer each day, curious about this human who moved with quiet authority. She watched him talk to other children, teaching them about stars, about Earth stories, about inventions that could make life easier. He did not speak down to them. He did not push them to obey. He simply guided, showing them possibilities and allowing them to learn through experience. One afternoon, as the twin suns of Tarian 6 began to set, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson, Lyra finally approached him. Her small hands shook as she stepped out from behind the rocks. "Excuse me," she called softly. Elias turned, his face lighting up with recognition. "Hello," he said gently. "You must be Lyra." I saw you helping everyone," she murmured. I think you're nice." He could have been afraid, unsure how to respond, but something inside him, a part of his humanity that had never left him, guided his answer. "You can," he said softly, "if you want me to be." A warmth spread through her chest, filling the emptiness she had carried for so long. Over the following days, she spent more time with Elias, learning from him, watching how he solved problems, how he treated others with patience and respect. He taught her to read the old human stories, to understand the tools left behind, to think creatively when faced with challenges. Lyra found herself laughing more, thinking more, and slowly, for the first time in her life, feeling safe. The colony continued its daily routines, but now, a new presence had shifted the balance. Where once Lyra had been invisible, now she had someone who cared, someone who would protect her, and someone who believed in her potential. And in return, Lyra's curiosity, courage, and innocence began to remind Elias of the very best parts of humanity: the kindness, empathy, and capacity to reach across worlds to make a difference. By the time the suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the settlement, Lyra and Elias stood together on a ridge overlooking the colony. The wind had calmed, and for a moment everything felt still, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. "You came because of me?" Lyra asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elias nodded. "I came because someone needed help, and because someone asked for a dad. That someone is very brave." She felt lighter, stronger, and for the first time, not entirely alone. She had reached out, and a human had answered. And somewhere deep inside, she sensed that this was only the beginning of a journey that would change her life forever. The wind blew softly around them, carrying with it the scent of dust, metal, and hope. And as the first stars appeared in the alien sky, Lyra realized that family was not just something given. It was something chosen, built through trust, love, and courage. And she had just found hers. Lyra woke early the next morning, the twin suns barely rising over the red horizon. The winds had calmed, leaving the settlement bathed in soft orange light. She rubbed her eyes and looked around, half expecting to find Elias gone. But he was already outside, kneeling near the edge of a broken water collector, examining the pipes and adjusting valves with practiced hands. She stepped quietly toward him, careful not to startle him. "Good morning," she whispered. Elias turned and smiled when he saw her. "Good morning, Lyra. Did you sleep well?" "You know, being a dad isn't just about telling someone what to do. It's about helping them, teaching them, and being there when they need you. If you want me to try, I will." Lyra pointed out the different homes, the communal gathering areas, and the old human machines left scattered across the sands. She told him about the elders, the other children, and the rules of her people. Elias listened carefully, asking questions, taking notes in a small electronic pad. He did not judge or dismiss her explanations, no matter how strange they seemed. He asked about daily life, about what was important to them, and about the challenges they faced. Lyra felt a strange sense of pride as she explained everything. She was being listened to, really listened to, for the first time in her life. As the day went on, Elias began to help around the settlement. He repaired broken water pumps, adjusted energy fields, and even fixed a small transport vehicle that had been stuck in the sand for weeks. The colony elders watched from a distance, some skeptical, others curious. Lyra noticed their eyes lingering on him, but Elias did not let it bother him. He worked with care, speaking politely, and always offering explanations for what he was doing. Lyra followed him everywhere, asking questions and helping when she could. At first, Elias hesitated to let her touch anything important, but she was quick and careful. Soon, he allowed her to hand him tools, to adjust small settings, and even to climb onto the transport vehicle with him. She felt a growing sense of competence and pride, and he smiled whenever she succeeded. During a break in the afternoon, Elias led Lyra to a small hill overlooking the settlement. The twin suns cast long shadows, and the red sands glowed like fire. He handed her a small human book, one of the old Earth stories he had brought with him. "This is about a girl who went on a long journey and learned about courage," he said. "I think you might like it." As evening approached, a sudden alarm sounded from the edge of the settlement. The sensors picked up a massive storm forming in the distance, moving faster than anyone had predicted. Dust and wind could destroy homes, ruin crops, and trap children if they were unprepared. The elders began to shout orders, but confusion spread quickly. Some were unsure how to reinforce the structures, and the younger children began to cry. Elias stood, his calm presence cutting through the chaos. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "We have to prepare. Lyra, can you help me gather the children?" She felt fear prick her heart, but she also felt strength in knowing Elias trusted her. Together, they helped organize the frightened community, moving quickly and efficiently. The storm hit with a roar. Red dust whipped through the air, tearing at walls and blowing loose debris across the settlement. Lyra held tightly to a small child as Elias shouted instructions, fixing a broken support beam with one hand while holding a protective shield with the other. The human's tools and ingenuity, combined with the children's quick thinking under Lyra's guidance, kept the worst of the destruction from happening. After what felt like hours, the storm passed. The settlement was battered but intact. Some buildings were damaged, but no lives were lost. The elders who had doubted Elia's presence now looked at him with newfound respect. Lyra stood beside him, chest heaving but smiling through her exhaustion. "You were amazing," she whispered. Elias looked down at her, smiling but tired. "You were amazing too. I couldn't have done it without you." Lyra worked alongside Elias, learning not just practical skills but also how to think creatively and plan ahead. He taught her how to reinforce structures, how to use the old human technology safely, and how to keep everyone calm during emergencies. She asked questions constantly, eager to understand. One morning, Elias took her aside. "Lyra," he said, "do you want to see something special?" But what caught her attention was the night sky, already filled with stars, twinkling and strange in ways she had never imagined. "These are from my home," Elias said softly. "Earth, I want you to know that no matter where you are, there is always more to see, more to learn, and more to dream about." She had never thought beyond her small settlement, never imagined distant worlds or alien skies beyond her own. But with Elias, everything seemed possible. Over the next few weeks, the bond between Lyra and Elias grew. She began to trust him fully, asking questions about Earth, about humans, and about his own life. He shared stories carefully, never overloading her with details she wasn't ready for. He told her about challenges he had faced, mistakes he had made, and lessons he had learned. She listened, wide-eyed, absorbing everything. Elias, in turn, began to feel something he had not felt in years, the quiet joy of guiding a young life, of being needed in the simplest and most meaningful way. He had traveled across galaxies, witnessed conflicts, and seen countless worlds, but nothing touched him as deeply as the trust and hope of this small alien girl. One evening, after a long day of teaching and exploring, Lyra turned to him. "Elias, why do you care about me?" "Because you asked for help, and because I believe everyone deserves someone who cares. You're brave, smart, and kind. You deserve a chance to grow, to be happy, and to have someone in your corner." Elias reached out and ruffled her hair gently. "And I'm glad I came. We're going to do great things together." Lyra's confidence grew, and she began to feel a sense of belonging she had never known. The colony began to notice the change in her. The elders who had once doubted Elias now saw the positive impact he had on their children. Other children looked up to Lyra, admiring her courage and intelligence. And Lyra, in turn, felt pride in herself, knowing she was no longer invisible, no longer alone. One night, as the twin moons of Tarian 6 rose over the red horizon, Lyra sat beside Elias, holding a small device that transmitted faint lights across the sky. She looked at him, eyes wide and thoughtful. "Elias, do you think maybe I can really have a dad?" she asked softly. Elias smiled and placed a hand on her shoulder. "I already think you do. And I'm going to be here to show you what that means, every day, in every way I can." Family was about trust, care, and love, and she had found hers in the most unexpected way, in a human who had crossed galaxies to answer a child's quiet plea. The morning sun rose over Tarian 6 in pale gold, casting long shadows across the red sands. Lyra woke with excitement buzzing in her chest. Today was different. Elias had promised they would explore beyond the settlement, farther than she had ever gone before. The thought made her heart race. Adventure always brought challenges, but it also brought learning, and more importantly, it brought him, her human dad, by her side. Elias waited outside, adjusting a small pack filled with tools, rations, and maps of the surrounding area. "Ready?" he asked, his voice calm but warm. Lyra nodded, brushing the dust from her simple tunic. "Ready." As they walked, he pointed out landmarks, the jagged spires of rock that marked dangerous drop-offs, the strange plants that grew in small clusters, and the patterns of the shifting winds that could hide quicksand or loose soil. "You see, Lyra," Elias said, "the world is full of dangers, but also full of things to discover. If you pay attention, you can avoid the first and find the second." After hours of walking, they reached a plateau that overlooked a vast canyon. The sight took Lyra's breath away. She had never seen so much open space, so many layers of red and gold stretching as far as the eye could see. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Elias smiled. Yes, it is, and there's more to see, but we need to be careful. The canyon can be tricky, and not all paths are safe. It was about patience, preparation, and awareness. Halfway down, they encountered a broken bridge, a thin span of metal and stone that once connected the canyon walls. Years of storms had weakened it, leaving gaps and loose planks. Elias knelt beside it, examining the structure. "We can cross," he said finally, but slowly, carefully, one at a time. The drop below seemed endless, and the wind gusted sharply across the canyon. She looked at Elias, eyes wide. "You can do this," he said, his voice steady. "I'll go first, then you. Take your time, one step at a time." "Keep moving, Lyra," Elias called gently. "Trust the planks, trust yourself, and trust me." For the first time, she understood that courage was not something she was born with. It was something she could learn, something she could grow into. They continued down the canyon, discovering small caves and unusual rock formations. In one cave, they found old human equipment, half buried and abandoned. Elias carefully examined the pieces, explaining their use and showing Lyra how humans had lived and worked on this planet before her people settled there. She was fascinated, asking question after question, and he answered each one with patience. As they explored, the wind began to pick up again. Dark clouds rolled in from the horizon, and the temperature dropped sharply. Elias checked their position. "A storm is coming. We need to find shelter." "We'll wait it out together." She had never experienced anything like this, never faced a storm that seemed to roar across the land like a living thing. She looked at Elias, her eyes wide. "Don't worry," he said gently. "We are prepared. We will be safe. Storms can be frightening, but we can handle them together." He showed her how to listen to the patterns in the wind, how to predict the next gust, how to protect herself and others. Lyra listened, wide-eyed, absorbing every word. She realized that knowledge was a form of power, and that humans had a way of using it to survive even in the harshest conditions. When the storm finally passed, the canyon was quiet, the dust settling like a thin red blanket over the rocks. Elias helped Lyra to her feet. "We did it," he said. "We survived and we learned that's what matters." She had faced danger, she had learned to trust herself, and she had seen firsthand what humans could do, how intelligence, preparation, and courage could overcome almost any obstacle. As they neared the edge of the plateau, they spotted a group of children from the settlement waiting anxiously. They had followed the canyon paths to see Lyra, and when they saw her emerge safely, their faces lit up with admiration. Lyra waved, feeling proud, and Elias smiled, watching her connect with others. Back at the settlement, the elders approached Elias. "You teach them well," one said cautiously. "We see it in the children. They are stronger, braver, more capable. There is always more to learn, more to explore, and more ways to grow." Children were more confident, adults more willing to try new solutions, and the elders began to respect the presence of a human among them, not as an intruder but as a teacher and guide. One evening, Lyra sat beside Elias, watching the twin suns set behind the mountains. She leaned against him, feeling safe and content. "Elias, do you think humans are really as brave as you are?" she asked softly. Elias smiled, looking at the glowing horizon. "Humans can be brave," he said. "But bravery is not about strength alone. It's about facing fear, helping others, and never giving up. And you are brave too. You learned to trust yourself today. That makes you strong." They explored new areas of the canyon, discovered hidden springs, and even mapped old human pathways. Lyra learned to read the stars, understand the weather patterns, and think critically about problems. She began to see herself not just as an orphan, but as a capable, intelligent individual with a role to play in her community. Elias watched with quiet pride. He had traveled to countless worlds, met many species, and faced numerous dangers, but nothing compared to the joy of guiding Lyra, watching her grow, and seeing the impact of small, patient teaching. Humanity, he realized, was more than technology or strength. It was empathy, patience, and the ability to inspire others to rise above fear and doubt. One night, after a long day of exploration and teaching, Lyra asked a question she had been thinking about for days. "Elias, will you always be here, even when the storms come or when things get hard?" "Through storms, challenges, and adventures, I will be by your side." As the twin moons rose over Tarian 6, casting silver light across the red sands, Lyra and Elias sat side by side. The wind was calm, the air clear, and the stars shone bright above them. For the first time, Lyra felt truly safe, truly capable, and truly loved. She had asked a simple question, and it had changed everything. Together, they planned the next day's journey, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The canyon, the settlement, and the wider world held mysteries and dangers, but Lyra knew that with Elias by her side, she could meet them all. And for the first time, she dared to dream of a future filled with possibility, learning, and the quiet, steadfast presence of someone who truly cared. The adventure was only beginning, but Lyra felt ready. She had learned that courage was not just about facing danger, but about trusting oneself and others. And in the gentle guidance of a human who had crossed galaxies to answer a whispered plea, she had discovered the greatest strength of all, the power of love, empathy, and hope. The settlement had recovered from the last storm, but the winds on Tarian 6 never truly rested. Lyra woke to a sharp gust that rattled the thin walls of her temporary shelter. She rolled out of bed and hurried outside, finding Elias already walking through the dust-choked streets, checking on the water supply and the children. His calm presence was reassuring, and Lyra followed him closely, eager to help. "Good morning," she called. Elias turned and smiled. "Good morning, Lyra, ready for a busy day." "What are we doing first?" Lyra had learned to navigate these paths safely, following the subtle signs Elias had taught her. The pattern of wind over the rocks, the placement of loose stones, even the smell of the air when something was wrong. As they approached the outer fields, Lyra noticed a flicker of movement near the collectors. A loose panel vibrated in the wind, and small sparks danced from exposed wiring. She pointed. "Elias, look. I'll guide you." The energy hum stabilized, and the collectors glowed steadily. Lyra exhaled a long breath, her chest swelling with pride. "We did it," she whispered. "Yes, we did," Elias said, ruffling her hair. "You were excellent." The elders had detected an approaching storm of unusual intensity, unlike anything the colony had faced before. It moved quickly, and preliminary scans suggested it could bring strong winds, dust surges, and sudden electrical discharges that could damage both the settlement and the outer fields. Elias immediately took charge. "We need to move quickly. Lyra, gather the children and the vulnerable residents. I'll help the adults reinforce the buildings. Follow my instructions, and we will get through this together." The settlers watched, skeptical at first, but quickly learned from his methods, following his instructions with precision. As the storm approached, Lyra felt fear prickle her skin. The winds howled like wild beasts, whipping red dust through the streets. Children huddled close to her, shivering with fright. She gripped one small hand, whispered encouragement, and led them toward a sturdy building Elias had identified as safe. The storm hit with a roar, shaking walls and rattling roofs. Dust and small debris whipped through the air, stinging Lyra's skin. She crouched with the children, shielding them as best she could. In that moment, she realized the depth of Elias' presence. His calm, steady guidance allowed them to act, not panic. His humanity was not just in words, but in action, in the courage to face danger and protect others. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the sound of wind tearing across the settlement. Lyra stayed with the children, offering water, small words of comfort, and steady reassurance. She remembered the lessons Elias had taught her: patience, observation, and the power of calm determination. She held tightly to these lessons, applying them instinctively. When the storm finally subsided, the settlement was battered but intact. Some buildings had damage, and the outer fields had suffered minor setbacks, but no lives were lost. Lyra stepped outside, breathing in the still, dusty air. She looked at Elias, whose clothes were covered in dust and scratches, yet his eyes shone with pride and relief. "You were amazing," she said softly. "You were amazing too," he replied, lifting her chin gently. "You led the children well. You kept them safe. That is bravery. That is why she succeeded." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Elias and Lyra walked through the streets, helping residents repair minor damage and distribute supplies. Lyra's confidence had grown immensely. She found herself taking the initiative, solving small problems, and even teaching younger children the techniques she had learned from Elias. She felt a deep sense of purpose, realizing that her presence mattered. That evening, they sat together on a low ridge overlooking the settlement. The twin moons rose, casting silver light across the red sands. Lyra leaned against Elias, exhausted but content. "Do you think humans are always like you?" she asked quietly. Elias shook his head. "No, not all humans are the same, but humans have the capacity for courage, intelligence, and empathy. We can solve problems, protect others, and make choices that improve the lives of those around us. And sometimes, we get the chance to do something truly meaningful, like helping someone find safety and hope." It's you too. You learn to act, to trust, to care for others. That is what makes this work. You're becoming strong, capable, and brave. She began leading small groups of children, helping adults with practical solutions, and even suggesting improvements to the energy collectors and water systems. The elders observed her growth, and slowly their skepticism toward both Elias and Lyra began to fade. One afternoon, Elias took Lyra to a small hill overlooking the outer fields. "I want you to see something," he said. From the ridge, they watched the settlement below, busy with repairs and renewed activity. Children played cautiously, adults worked efficiently, and the community seemed more united than ever. "This is what your leadership looks like," Elias said. "You helped make this happen. You brought courage, focus, and hope to these people." "I didn't do it alone," she said softly. "You helped me. And you are learning that." Elias sat beside her, pointing out constellations and telling her stories of distant worlds, human history, and the lessons he had learned on countless journeys. Lyra listened wide-eyed, imagining a universe full of possibilities. She understood that the bond she shared with Elias was not just about protection. It was about growth, learning, and trust. The next morning, Lyra woke with renewed determination. The storm and the challenges had taught her something important, that fear could be faced, that problems could be solved, and that leadership could be learned. She looked at Elias and smiled. "I want to help even more," she said. "You will," he replied. "And I will be here to guide you every step of the way." She had learned that human qualities, patience, courage, ingenuity, and empathy, could change lives, even entire communities. As the twin suns rose again, casting golden light across Tarian 6, Lyra and Elias set off once more, ready to face the challenges ahead. Lyra knew that whatever came next, storms, dangers, or surprises, she would meet it with courage, wisdom, and the steadfast presence of a human who had crossed galaxies to answer a quiet, whispered plea. And in her heart, she knew that she was not alone. She had a family now. A human dad who believed in her, guided her, and stood beside her, showing the best of what humanity could be. And together they were ready to face the world. The morning on Tarian 6 was calm, almost peaceful. The twin suns rose slowly over the red sands, casting long golden shadows across the settlement. Lyra stood on the ridge overlooking the colony, her small hands gripping a rock as she watched the adults and children move about their daily routines. She felt a deep sense of pride. Weeks ago, she had been a quiet, overlooked child, afraid of storms and unsure of her place. Now she saw herself as part of something bigger, a community she helped shape, a family she belonged to, and a future she could influence. Elias approached quietly, his steps crunching softly on the sand. "Morning," he said with a gentle smile. Lyra turned, her eyes bright. "Morning, Dad," she said. The words came naturally now, without hesitation. She had said them before in private, but saying them aloud felt different, like claiming a place in the world, a place in his life. Elia's smile widened. "Good morning, Lyra. Are you ready for today? It's time to show the colony what you've learned." The ceremony began with children performing simple demonstrations of what they had learned, climbing safely, working with tools, reading basic maps, and identifying natural signs of danger. Lyra guided them confidently, showing patience and understanding, correcting mistakes gently, and encouraging them with praise. The colony watched in awe. Elias stood nearby, observing with quiet pride. He had spent weeks teaching, guiding, and protecting, but now the results were evident. Lyra had grown into a capable leader, someone who could inspire others, solve problems, and act with courage. The elders exchanged glances, nodding in approval. The skepticism that had shadowed Elia's presence faded completely. When the children finished, Lyra stepped forward. She addressed the elders and the gathered community, her voice strong and clear despite her small stature. "We can work together," she said. "We can face storms, fix problems, and help each other. We don't have to be afraid. We can be brave, and we can be smart, and we can care for each other." Some of the adults, moved by her words and leadership, smiled. Others nodded, realizing that this small child, guided by a human, had taught them more about courage and cooperation than they had expected. Elias stepped forward, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "Lyra has learned much," he said, "but she did not do it alone. Every one of you contributed to this strength. Together, humans and aliens can achieve remarkable things. And Captain Kane, you have shown the best of your people." Lyra led groups of children in games, showing them how to safely navigate obstacles she had learned from Elias. Adults shared stories and helped repair minor damage from past storms. The air was filled with laughter, chatter, and the faint hum of machinery returning to life. For the first time, the settlement felt unified, alive, and confident. Elias watched her from a distance, then walked beside her. "You've done something remarkable," he said, "not just for yourself, but for everyone here. I only helped you see what you were capable of." "I never thought I could feel this way," she whispered. "That I could be important, that I could make a difference. That combination makes a real difference." That evening, as the twin moons rose over the red sands, Lyra and Elias sat quietly, watching the settlement settle down for the night. Children were tucked into safe homes, adults were resting, and the community seemed calm and strong. "Do you think humans and aliens can always work together?" Lyra asked softly. Elias considered the question. "I do," he said. "But it takes effort, patience, and understanding. We have to respect each other, teach each other, and learn from each other. That is how we grow stronger together." Lyra led children in learning exercises, helping adults implement new safety measures, and exploring nearby areas to map resources. Her confidence grew daily. She had learned that leadership was not about being the strongest, but about listening, guiding, and inspiring others. And she had learned that courage was not about fearlessness, but about action, determination, and compassion. Elias continued to support her, but he also allowed her independence, giving her room to make decisions, solve problems, and learn from mistakes. Their bond strengthened, not just as teacher and student, but as family. He had crossed galaxies to answer her whispered plea, and in doing so, they had both changed. One morning, Lyra stood at the edge of the canyon with a group of children, pointing out landmarks and teaching them how to navigate safely. She paused, looking toward the distant horizon, and thought about how far she had come. She remembered the first time she whispered, "Can I have a dad?" into the void. She had been small, afraid, and alone. Now she had guidance, purpose, and hope. And she had a dad, a human who had chosen to care for her, to teach her, and to protect her. Elias joined her, carrying a small pack of supplies. "Ready to explore?" he asked. Lyra nodded, her eyes shining. "Yes, there's so much to see and so much to learn." Lyra felt pride not just in herself, but in the community she helped inspire. She had learned that growth, courage, and compassion were contagious, and that one person's actions could ripple through a community, changing lives. As the day wore on, the settlement flourished. Adults repaired buildings with new techniques learned from Elias, children practiced skills under Lyra's guidance, and the elders observed with approval. The humans' presence had brought more than technology. They had brought empathy, intelligence, and patience. And through it all, Lyra had grown into a capable, confident young leader, ready to face any challenge. That evening, Lyra and Elias returned to the ridge overlooking the settlement. The twin moons rose, casting a silver glow across the red sands. Lyra leaned against him, feeling the warmth and security of family for the first time. "Do you think I can do even more?" she asked softly. Elias smiled. "Yes, you already have, and you will continue to grow, inspire others, and face new challenges. You are capable of far more than you know." And she felt gratitude, hope, and love for the human who had crossed galaxies to answer a simple whispered question. "I'm glad I asked," she whispered. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder and nodded. "And I'm glad you did. You taught me as much as I taught you. Together, we've built something important: courage, hope, and family." And so, under the twin moons of Tarian 6, Lyra and Elias stood together, watching the community they had helped guide. She felt safe, valued, and loved. She had a family, a purpose, and a future filled with possibilities. Humanity had shown its best qualities: empathy, courage, patience, and ingenuity, and Lyra had experienced them firsthand. The adventure of life on Tarian 6 was only beginning, but Lyra was ready. With her human dad by her side, she knew that together they could face anything. And as she looked out over the red sands and the glowing settlement, she felt a quiet certainty. No matter what challenges lay ahead, they would meet them together, and nothing could break the bond they had built. The stars shone brightly above them, the winds whispered softly through the canyon, and Lyra knew that she was home. She was no longer alone. She had courage, knowledge, community, and family, and that was more than enough to face the universe.